this is just the beginning.
Welcome to the CTO of the Future virtual event. I'm Allison Snyder, a managing editor at Axios. I'm coming to you from my home in Washington, D.C. Thank you to General Motors for making this event possible, and welcome to our audiences on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on Axios.com. Please follow along using the Axios Events hashtag and @Axios on Twitter. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to unpack how STEM education is changing and the impact of expanding educational access in this field. Our first guest is founder and CEO of Girls Who Code, Reshma Saujani, who I got to catch up with earlier this week. Our first guest is founder and CEO of Girls Who Code, Reshma Saujani, joining us from New York, New York.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm excited to talk with you. So my first question for you is, the pandemic has really exposed the divide in access to technology and education. And I'm curious how those disparities are affecting students' abilities to pursue STEM subjects in particular, and how can that be addressed moving forward, and what's at stake if it isn't?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that education was inequitable before COVID, but COVID has really shined a light on how deep that inequity is. You know, when schools closed in March, they did, leaving almost 12 million students without access to Wi-Fi. 104 million kids had caregiving responsibilities. And I've heard from my own students how COVID has been devastating for their education. I mean, students today, they're not just thriving, they're barely surviving. You know, half the girls that we teach are Black, Latinx, half are low income. Many of them are living in densely populated cities or in rural areas. They are caregivers, they are babysitters, they are essential workers, right? And they are devastated by this pandemic. And we see the same devastation happen in some of our older students. About 30% of Girls Who Code college-age alumni had their internships or their full-time offers reneged. Almost 30% of our students had a parent or a guardian lose their job. So it's been hugely traumatic. You know, I have a mentee, Kaya Sue, who is studying computer science at GW, and she's Black. And she said, you know, one of the hardest choices I had to make this year was deciding whether to go back to school and possibly getting COVID and bringing it back to my parents and my family, when we know 1 out of 1,000 families, Black families, get exposed to the coronavirus, or picking remote education, where I knew that I wasn't going to get the same experience as many of our other students. So many young people are having to make these false, painful choices, and it's going to set us back for decades to come.
And you're seeing it throughout the pipeline, it sounds like you're saying.
Throughout the pipeline, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing it in my 5-year-old's kindergarten classroom. We just learned today that, you know, schools are being shut down in New York City. And as a working mom, and I have support at home, I don't have time to get on Razzle with him and then get on Google Classroom and then teach him how to read and do his Recce-Neck. And it's just, I know he is not going to come out of this year with the same depth of understanding as he would if he was in school every single day. And I'm somebody with resources, right? And I'm somebody who has a little bit of time to sit with him and go over his homework. A lot of families, they're barely making it. And it's such an unfair burden to place on them.
So I have a question. So much of the work that you do, and STEM in general, is very hands-on and in person. So how has your work shifted in that regard throughout the pandemic? And I guess more broadly, how has STEM education and access to it changed since you launched Girls Who Code?
Yes, I think there's 2 things I learned. So Girls Who Code, we've taught 300,000 girls to code over the past 8 years. And the way that we do that is we have in-person summer programs where, you know, 20 girls will go into a company like, you know, Microsoft or Google or Facebook, right? And they'll learn how to computer program with the hopes that they go on to major or minor in computer science. We also have 10,000 Girls Who Code clubs all across the country for 3rd graders on up. And then we have these loops in college campuses to help reduce the attrition rate of women in STEM degrees. So everything we did is in person. Was in person. And then COVID hit. And we have a goal that we believe that by 2027, we can get to gender parity, not just by the work that Girls Who Code's doing, but with the work that's happening in the movement. And we don't want to change that goal. And so we looked at the situation and said, all right, we're going to have to deeply embrace virtual learning. We're going to have to lean into it. So we shifted our summer programs to virtual classrooms. Instead of teaching 1,300 girls, we taught 5,000. And we made sure that half of them, again, were Black and Latinx, and half of them were under the poverty line. And what we saw there was an opportunity, because we saw the mistakes that were being made, quite frankly, in our education system, in which that we were designing for technology and not pedagogy. And what I mean by that is the key of our philosophy is that we want girls from all walks of life to come. So I needed to design for a young girl of color, right, that might be living in public housing, that doesn't have access to Wi-Fi, that might only have one device at home, even though there's 3 siblings, and that's probably an essential worker. How do I design something that makes sure that, again, she thrives and not just survives? And with that in mind, we designed this incredible program that actually allowed us to reach more people. And what we found was that the effectiveness of it was just as good as our in-person summer program. However, where we've seen a lot of challenges are in our after-school program. And I can see this as a parent, right? I don't have time, or my teachers don't have time, right, to do the type of after-school programming that was once being offered before the coronavirus. So guess what's being affected? Girls Who Code clubs, robotics clubs, Lego clubs, right? All the things where oftentimes kids were getting that extra STEM push or that extra exposure to STEM education, not necessarily in the classroom, but after school. And that's the thing that we're seeing, again, by how our clubs programs have shrunk by the impact of coronavirus.
I'm curious, bigger picture, going sort of beyond the pandemic. There was a report earlier this autumn that found that more Gen Z and millennials reported being discouraged from pursuing science when they were a student compared to generations before them, Gen Xers and baby boomers. And in the US, across those ages, the respondents said that the biggest barrier was inequality, so gender, race, and ethnicity. What's fueling those trends, and what can be done from your perspective?
50% of them, right, said that it was race and gender. So what's fueling that is recognizing that it's not a pipeline problem. You know, back in the day when I started Girls Who Code, people would say, you know what, I want to hire women. I want to hire people of color. I just can't find them. And now we've inspired so many hundreds, thousands of women and people of color to get into computer science. But then what happens is when they go on their first interview or they have their first experience at many of these big tech companies, it's not great. And they face microaggressions or straight up racism and sexism. And that's why almost 50% of women will drop out of their tech job within the first 5 years. 50%. And if you ask those women, what is that about? It's about culture. It was about the environment that they were in. They didn't feel welcome. They didn't feel like they were going to be encouraged. They didn't feel like there was upward mobility for them. It is still a bro culture. Until we change that, until Silicon Valley admits that all nerds are not welcome, we will continue to not solve this problem that is very much necessary, not because for the sake of equity, for the sake of equality or equity, but because, quite frankly, innovation depends on having a diverse group of thought thinkers and thought leaders and innovators and creators sitting around the table. The problems that we face as a country, as a world today, are too complex to simply have white and Asian men be the only ones who are able to solve them.
So it's interesting. I want to pick up on a thread there, and that is there's been some research recently that's found that really sort of success in college degrees in STEM really depends more on social connections and how someone feels in the classroom. And women, African Americans, Latinos, and Indigenous students are more disproportionately hindered by these sorts of classes, these weed out classes. How might STEM education programs sort of better account for these factors like social connection and sort of how someone feels, you know, in their around their peers?
I mean, look, it's inclusion, right? It's you want to be in a classroom, you don't want to be the only one. And you want to be able to turn to someone who's like, am I crazy? Or did you just experience that too? It's community, it's sisterhood. And one of the things that I would attribute so much to Girls Who Code success and the success of our students in sticking with their commitment and their passion to computer science is the sisterhood and the community that they've built. So even though there might be only 5 women at Hunter College and 5 women at Stanford and 10 women at MIT, they're all able to get together and connect with one another and share knowledge and share information and also share this sense of feeling like I'm not alone. it's hard to be the only one. It's hard to feel like you're alone. And that's also why, we spend a lot of time really building our male allies. 40% of girls who code teachers are men. And one of the things that I feel so, hopeful about is this next generation of men who see the struggles that women, Black women, Latinx women, Indigenous women, trans women see and they face. And they're standing in solidarity, hand in hand, as part of our sisterhood to make sure that that culture changes.
One last question for you. We try to end with one fun thing. So my question for you is, if you could program a computer to do one thing, what would it be?
Well, right now I'm feeling a lot of love for my dog. So I want it to program it to tell me what Stanley's thinking.
That's what my daughter said. She wants to know if we're able to be able to talk to animals. So I love that.
I love that your daughter and I have that in common.
Thank you so much, Reshma, for joining us today. Up next, we have a view from the top segment with our Chief People Officer, Dominique Taylor.
Thank you, Allison. I'm delighted to be joined today by Hina Baluch, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Sustainability Communications at General Motors. Welcome, Hina.
Thank you, Dominique.
Hina, you and I share a passion for DEI, albeit in different roles, industries, and companies. Tell us about your role at General Motors.
My journey with General Motors started in 2016, where I started off by leading STEM education. And then my role kept expanding to research and data analytics. And then now I also lead sustainability and diversity, equity, and inclusion for the company. And all of these roles are diverse and different, but really connected to one another.
Sounds great. And what's top of mind for you and your team right now?
Right now, we're really focused on the pandemic that's going on and its impact on students' learning. We know that face-to-face learning has been halted for a long period of time, and this is truly unprecedented for the world, but this is particularly unprecedented for the United States. In my personal life experience and work experience, I've worked in conflict settings where learning is halted for a long period of time because of the unrest. And there's tons of data that's available by United Nations and World Bank and other international NGOs that really points to the fact that such a long period of halt in learning causes dire outcomes for students, and particularly for students who are from marginalized and minoritized groups. So at General Motors, we're really looking at the role that we can play here. We've looked at some early modeling data that really tells us that the outcomes are already beginning to be very bad for students, and particularly students that are from low-income groups or from marginalized groups. And what we did at the onset of the crisis was that we started a STEM online series, Electrifying STEM Education, and we built hands-on immersive learning type projects that students can do at home with their parents or with their teachers or with the guardian, and really gave them an opportunity for immersive learning in STEM. We also partnered with Donors Choose in their Keep Kids Learning program. And through that program, we were able to provide emergency access to technology, to computers, to different types of things that the teachers needed to make learning accessible to students, particularly those students who didn't have the right learning environments at home.
And how is General Motors making an impact in STEM learning, and specifically which groups and communities are underrepresented in the STEM fields?
Mm-hmm. So Dominique, if we look at the macro level data, women make up to 49% of the STEM bachelor's degree earners, but they're only around at 29% when it comes to workforce. If we look at LGBTQI, the numbers are at single percentage, around 3%, whatever, weak data that we have available there. And if we look at students with disability, it's at around 5%. If we look at if we look at Black and Latinx students combined, they make around 15% of the workforce and around 20% of the bachelor's degree earners. So those numbers, as you can see, are really dire. And I really believe that they are, of course, an outcome of a very of this racialized, a long history of racialized injustice, and a long history of systemic barriers that students don't not only feel in the society or face in the society, but also within the education systems. Our approach at General Motors has really been to understand this root cause and try to partner with organizations that are not only focused on immersive learning, that are not only focused on innovation, that are not only focused on programs that are engaging for the students, but that are also focusing on ways of learning that are culturally responsive and are focused on pedagogies that are operating from this anti-deficit framework, that any student is able to do good in class, and the systems and the society and the education systems have to support them to be able to achieve that.
That's awesome. So tell me more about why those partnerships with corporations and nonprofits and educators are so important. It sounds like there's some real synergy there.
Yes. So as I mentioned, the macro level numbers are pretty dire. So that gives you a sense of the enormity of the problem. And I think no one entity here can solve this challenge. And if we look at our partnerships and how we approach this, how General Motors approaches this, is that we partner with nonprofits that are really creating this innovative programs. But then also we want to bring in our industry expertise because, of course, as a technology company, we are really keeping an eye on where the STEM education is going, where the technology is going, what kind of job and skills would be needed in the next several years. And with that in mind, we've developed several partnerships. For example, we partnered with Girl Scouts recently to develop an automotive badge series where our engineers, designers, different team members participated in developing that curriculum with Girl Scouts. We partnered with an organization called SMASH, where they work on different types of college readiness opportunities and college readiness programs with different colleges across the U.S., including Morehouse, Wayne State University here in Detroit. So I'd say that because the challenge is so enormous, because the challenge is so structural, and because the challenge is so deeply embedded in the society, we'd have to all come together to find innovative ways to solve it. And at the same time, particularly as an industry, we have to bring in our expertise from the technology side and inform the curriculum.
Wonderful. And then as industries advance their capabilities through technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, how are GM's investments in STEM education helping to ready the next generation for careers in STEM?
So GM has right now about 3,000 jobs that we are hiring for. And these jobs are in design, these jobs are in engineering, these jobs are in different areas of software, IT, and I feel that if we don't have the right STEM pipeline where we have the right kind of talent coming in, and if GM wants to be the most inclusive company in the world, we won't be able to get there without making sure that our candidate slate is diverse. And to be able to do that, we have partnered, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence, we have partnered with International Society for Technology and Education that works with students and teachers across the country. And we've built a curriculum that's focused on AI and that takes AI into the classrooms, K to 12, and really focuses on bringing hands-on AI skills into the hands of the teacher. And we really believe that teachers play such a crucial role here, right? Because if you make that knowledge accessible to a teacher, it's the best way to scale that work. And so what we've tried to do is that we've really tried to make high-tech opportunities available into the hands of the teachers who are then able to take it to the students. And this particular program that we have going on with ISTE is actually in English, Spanish, and Arabic. So it's a multilingual AI-focused program.
That's amazing. Thank you for all the work you do. It sounds like you're making a real difference in these students and these teachers' lives. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dominique. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. And now I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Brian Walsh.
Hi, my name is Brian Walsh. I'm the feature correspondent for Axios. Our final guests here are host and executive producer of Mission Unstoppable, Miranda Cosgrove, and the CEO of Lyda Philanthropies and co-founder of the If Then initiative, Nicole Small. So great for both of you to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Nicole, maybe I can start with you. I want to tell me how the If Then initiative looks to really encourage young women and girls to enter STEM fields, in part by trying to raise the profile, I think, of women who are already in these fields.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having us here today. You know, it's no secret that women are grossly underrepresented in STEM careers, especially women of color. And this year, it's been a really exciting year. It marks the centennial of the U.S. women winning the right to vote. A record-breaking 6 women entered the race for president. Half of the college-educated workforce in the country are women. But somehow, only 1/3 of the jobs in STEM are still occupied by women. So If Then was started. It's a transformational initiative that was started by Dallas-based Lyda Philanthropies. And our goal is to close the gender gap in STEM careers by inspiring the next generation of women innovators and pioneers. And we do this by meeting the girls where they are. So we know where they are, right? They're on their phones, they're on YouTube, they're spending a lot of time in a lot of places where they're getting a tremendous amount of content. And we know that if we support a woman in STEM, she can change the world. And a little girl, if she can see it, she can be it. So that's our goal, is to use an exhibition, to use media content like Mission Unstoppable, which Miranda's going to talk about, our YouTube show, Goldie Blocks, and our new If Then collection to really change the way little girls see themselves and what their opportunities in the world are. Because we know today for sure, whether it's climate change, whether it's COVID, or whether it's cancer, we know that science is the answer to changing the world right now.
Absolutely. So talking about tremendous content, I mean, Miranda, what message does Mission Unstoppable really try to convey to its viewers? I mean, how do you create a show that really makes a career in science seem cool?
Well, for me, it's just been so much fun getting to meet all these different women and have all these different people on the show every week. It's my first time ever executive producing something and hosting. So it's just been really eye-opening for me. I went to USC and I majored in psychology. I changed my major 3 times. And I ended up in a major that has to do with STEM. So it was just really exciting for me to have this opportunity to show young girls what women in STEM really look like, how diverse of a group that really is. For me, I always thought of like Albert Einstein when I thought of a scientist. I didn't really think of all these different diverse women from all different backgrounds. So I just think the show does a really good job of showing all different kinds of people and letting little girls know what different job opportunities are out there in STEM.
Absolutely. Nicole, could you tell me a little bit more about the If Then collection? I mean, it's, you're trying to show off women who are in these STEM fields, but you're doing it in a really new and innovative way, in a way they probably are not really accustomed to and that other people are not really used to seeing them, I think.
Yeah, well, we were super excited this year that as part of the If Then initiative, we selected 125 STEM role models. These are amazing 125 kind of badass women who are doing some of the coolest jobs in the world. Everything from a L'Oreal chemist doing makeup to U.S. soccer physician. We've got women who are doing all sorts of things. And so it was really important that we put these amazing women in front of girls everywhere. And I think you don't really realize until somebody sort of raises it to your attention that whether you're in a museum and looking at the walls, whether you're looking at textbooks, whether you're looking at TV ads, an ad that might go by on a bus, you don't really realize how rarely you actually see women in STEM careers. And so we wanted to change what you saw on the walls of museums, in classrooms, on posters. So we launched the largest collection of digital assets anytime ever in the world of women in STEM. And these are available for free to any of our nonprofit partners, teachers everywhere. And gosh, this has been a year where we're spending a lot of time virtually. So we feel like it was a great time to launch a virtual collection. We've got digital assets that include images that can be used on posters. We've got video content of all 125 women talking about their careers. And these are photographs and imagery and videos that are going to be used all over the country. They've already been installed in museums across the country. So as we slowly are able to get back into those places, it's amazing. We've had textbook manufacturers reach out to us and ask for access to the collection. So we really believe this collection is going to change the way, not just little girls, but everybody look at women in STEM. It's just so many unexpected cool places that science is. And it's just, as Miranda said, the perception of that has been of a particular thing, and we're trying to change that.
Miranda, I have to ask you, you mentioned majoring in psychology at USC, which is like a real major, unlike the English major I had. How did that sort of inform your experience making the show, the way you look at science, actually having gone through some of that yourself?
I definitely think it helped just knowing a little bit about the STEM world, but I've learned so much more just from being a part of the show, honestly. Some of my favorite pieces of the show are getting to hear from the real women and how they got into STEM in the first place. I got to meet a lady who was a chemist, and she made makeup, and that was really fun for me. And this season, we just started season 2 of the show. This season, they actually went and followed an ocean conservationist and got to follow around great white sharks. And I just think we do a good job of showing young girls how fun all these jobs can be. It makes me want to do the jobs, and I'm not even a little so.
Awesome. Nicole, can you talk a little bit about the STEM Life campaign, which I know is connected to the show as well? I mean, how, again, you're sort of using these social media channels to further that message.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who has maybe a little girl in their life, they're probably familiar with TikTok. I think the whole world is familiar with TikTok right now. And so this is sort of part of that strategy of we need to meet girls where they are, right? So, and girls are all over the place, right? They're in their classrooms, they're in Girl Scouts, but they spend a lot of time on their phones, and they're spending a lot of time on places like TikTok. So instead of trying to fight that, right, if you can't beat them, join them. And so we were really proud as part of Mission Unstoppable second season to launch a campaign called #STEMLife on TikTok. And we went from 9 million views to 1.7 billion views of our STEM Life hashtag this week. It's been trending all week on TikTok. And I have to say, not only am I so excited about how many people are seeing the word STEM related to really fun, really cool stuff, but it also made me kind of famous in my house with my 2 little girls this week, because I could bring work to them. Because I have 2 little girls who are in that category, right? And they spend a ton of time on TikTok. And all of a sudden, when STEM Life launched and STEM is all over TikTok, all of a sudden, right, that affiliation is, wait, this is where I like to spend my time, and it's super fun and really cool and kind of edgy. And STEM is here. So by natural affiliation, STEM must be really cool too. And like, let me watch some of these really fun videos. So people are crazy creative. And it's been so much fun to watch and see what people have been doing with it. So it's really taken off, which is really exciting.
Excellent. I wanted to sort of bring in a couple questions from the audience while we have some time still. There's one from an audience member in Dallas, Texas. Maybe, Miranda, you could go for this one. You're asking what's the importance of expanding STEM to STEAM, which is, STEM, but like bring the arts in as well, as someone who has obviously some experience now in both of those.
Yeah, getting to be on a show talking about STEM to young people, and coming from a background where I was an actress pretty much my entire life, it's just been really eye-opening for me. I feel like I've had a great time getting to be a part of this series. And I've met kids. Kids have come up to me on the street and said, like, I want to get into STEM now because of the show. And that just feels so good. It's really exciting.
Excellent. And one more maybe for you, Nicole, this is from someone in Minneapolis. What's the biggest challenge in creating diversity in STEM from a gender and a racial point of view?
Well, I mean, I think, right, that diversity is important across the board, right? I mean, we're trying to solve the world's hardest problems right now. And I think to solve those problems, you need every voice at the table, right? So whether it's a different age, whether it's different ethnicity, whether it's different geographic regions, it's incredibly important that we have as many voices at the table. So we've got as many brains as possible trying to solve all the things going on in the world right now. And that's what we're most excited about. Of our 125 women, we have women from all across the US. We have women across all stages and ages of their careers. We have different women from different diversity, from an ethnic standpoint. So it's really been important to us that we make sure that every little girl, and really every little kid, by the way, so little boys and little girls need to see women in these jobs, but we want everybody to see someone that looks like them doing something really cool. So it's really, really important because we need to bring all, views to solve these problems.
And maybe, Nicole, again, just one last question before we go. Is your ultimate hope that people are going to see this as at a young age, and this is going to change their lives? It can change the careers they go in, and that's going to change science. I mean, we will have a different scientific field thanks in part to efforts like this.
We hope so, right? I mean, even if every little girl doesn't pursue a career in science, we're pretty sure that 1.7 billion views on TikTok tells us that no one's going to look at STEM the same way, right? And I mean, science is literally everywhere. And so we hope that it's no longer something that's over there. Like, that's not for me. STEM, science, computer programming, all these things, right? They're part of everything we do. And so, we hope over the long term that, lots and lots of little girls get really excited about whether it's bats or sharks or computer programming or helping the U.S. women's soccer team win another title, right? Because they wouldn't do that without their whole team behind them. We need them, whether it's Taylor Swift putting on a concert. How do you think that engineering happens, right? One of our ambassadors helps make those things happen. So we hope that little girls, change their perspective on what they think they can do in the world. And everybody needs a little hope right now. And if you have hope that we can do whatever we want in the world, you have hope for a better future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for taking the time to talk about this incredibly important subject.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So thank you all for joining us this afternoon for another virtual conversation that has made everyone smarter faster. I want to thank our sponsor, General Motors, for making this event possible. For the latest news, please follow our dashboard on Axios.com or in the Axios app. You can all sign up for Axios newsletters at signup.axios.com. Before you go, we also do want to share some exciting new news for Axios in the coming months. We're going to be expanding into local markets to get you smarter and faster about where you live. For more information on our local news endeavor, you can check out axios.com/local. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you at axios.com.